I mean, sorry, one block, and if possible, two straps. One block, and if possible, two straps. Okay, so the block is going to go between the thighs. Well, first of all, put on a sacral strap. So the sacral strap, this is a sequence specifically for stabilizing the sacrum, stabilizing the hips. And sometimes hip instability is related to the sacrum, sometimes it's not. But in either case, this ought to help. So I'm putting a strap on at about the level of the center of the sacrum. You can vary where the strap goes. You can put it like more on the femur heads, which is the greater trochanter, a little bit lower, so like where my fingers are, or you could put it a little bit higher, you could put it a little bit lower. It kind of depends on you, and you can experiment. If you're having low back pain or hip pain, you can experiment with where the strap should go that's going to give you the most support. And it's very tight. I can like barely put my thumb tips under it. It's very tight, and it should feel good. If you have back pain, hip pain, putting the strap on should immediately help. And so, anyway, we'll start with that, and also I'll just say have the buckle in the front so that you can easily adjust it. Okay. I put a short strap on, but you could put a longer strap on. Just make sure you tuck it so that it's not in your way. Okay. Then the block goes at the very top of the thighs. Now, if you have a second strap, that could be very helpful. It's not necessary, but it can be helpful in terms of creating more stability. And so this strap is going to go right below the block. And the combination of the two straps in the block, you should feel like really secure, really stable. Um, and if you did have pain, then hopefully you feel completely pain-free at this point. So here we are in Tadasana, and you can bring your feet together or like an inch or two apart, whatever works for the shape of your legs, considering that you have the block there. And take a moment to spread through the soles of the feet. Take a moment to really spread the toes and get even on the soles of the feet. Have a feeling of the outer thighs pulling in, so the thighs firm into the block, but not to grip the inner thighs. Just take a moment to grip the inner thighs, to do that, and to feel what's happening. And now roll the thighs in, release the inner thighs back, clamp the outer thighs in, and then notice what's happening. Okay, so sometimes it's helpful to do to compare and contrast the two different actions to see what the effects are and what gives you more relief. So it's common to hold the block with the grip of the inner thighs. I'm saying hold the block with the grip of the outer thighs. So see if you can feel the difference between gripping with the outer thighs, gripping with the inner thighs. So whenever we have hip instability, sacral issues, then it's very much a matter of bringing the legs into a healthy relationship with the pelvis. And so one of those criteria is that the femur heads coming deeply into the hip sockets, having a good, secure relationship of the femur head in the hip socket. Okay, so outer thighs firm, and the gluteals are working here. The gluteal muscles lengthening down, the gluteus medius and minimus lengthening down. Not so much the gluteus maximus. When you grip the gluteus maximus, can you feel the inner thigh spreading out? When you grip the gluteus maximus, the femurs rotate out. So it's not so much the gluteus maximus, it's more the gluteus minimus and medius, the two smaller sets of muscles that go downward. The gluteus maximus goes inward like this. The medius and minimus go downward. So grip the medius and minimus downward and the inner thighs back. You can take the arm variations here, so Urdhva Hastasana, and that may help you to get more length in the spine as you take the inner thighs back and the buttocks down. You can do Urdhva Badanguliasana here. So interlock your fingers and reach up more and more. You might find that having the stability in this pelvic region gives you more freedom in the spine and even in the shoulders. Just make sure that you're not throwing your lumbar forward in any of this, but that the arms are going straight up and the back ribs, the entire circumference of the ribs lengthening up. Change the interlock. Go back up. And then extend the arms out to the sides and down. Okay, so now here in Tadasana, you just have your hands on the hips for a moment. Here in Tadasana, experiment with shifting your weight so shift your weight to your left side until your right foot comes slightly off the floor, but be very stable on that standing leg. And then try going to the other side. So not to do any leaning, but just it's a subtle shift, shifting to one side and then lifting until the foot becomes light and just slightly comes off the floor, just grazing the floor, and then go back and forth like that. So what I'm inviting you to observe here is the relationship of the standing leg into the pelvis. That standing leg has to be really tall and pulling deeply into the hip socket. So going back and forth, go back and forth a few times at your own pace. And it's a subtle shift, no leaning. And that standing leg has to be like two legs. And you might notice that one leg does it more easily than the other. For me, because I have a chronic issue on my right side struggles with this. Left side feels stable. And so you might notice there's a discrepancy for yourself also. So the goal is to get to minimize the discrepancy and to get both legs to work evenly. Okay, now coming back to Tadasana. Now try this. I'll just give you the side view. You can stay facing forward. Now try this. So now it's like a small Utkatasana. So bending the legs, but now instead of sending the buttocks back in Utkatasana, lengthen the buttocks down. So it's just a small Utkatasana. I might not be able to go very far, but the goal here is to keep the femurs very secure in the hip socket, the buttocks pressing forward. The buttocks pressing forward as you bend at the ankles and knees, and you can take the arms up also. So not to think about going back or going into the full pose, but instead lengthening the buttocks down, pressing the buttocks forward, and then come on up. Do that a few times. The lumbar stays broad. And so what happens, let me just explain to you a little bit about what's happening. When I do classic Utkatasana, and the buttocks go back and the groins deep and all of that, it's kind of a forward bend action, right? A lot of times in forward bend action, the femurs are pulling out, they have to move away from each other to come into the forward bend shape. What I'm saying here today is to keep the femur heads coming in toward each other. Buttocks lengthening down, buttocks pressing forward as you come in, as you bend at the ankles and knees. All right. I do bend at the groins a little bit, but not very much. Try again. Inhale, exhale, Utkatasana, small Utkatasana. Broaden across the sacrum, broaden across the lumbar. Press the buttocks forward. Bring the femur heads closer into each other. And then come on up. Now, we up the ante considerably when we switch to one leg. So watch what I do. I'll face front so you can see. So I'll come into Utkatasana, small Utkatasana. And now, can I shift to one leg? The other foot becomes light. So this is quite difficult for me because the standing leg doesn't want to hold everything. Standing leg is kind of complaining. But can I get, so the goal is to get that femur head in, just like in Tadasana, it wants to kind of do like this, you know? So I have to keep it pulled in as I shift from side to side. Try that a few times. Inhale, Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, Utkatasana. Buttocks forward, buttocks forward. Bend the ankles and knees. Yeah. And then shift from side to side. Try taking one foot slightly off the floor. Standing on that one leg. See what it takes to stand on that one leg. And so the goal here is, yeah, you might notice that one leg does it more easily than the other. So the goal is to get that one leg to be as strong as two legs, and not to sway, not to shift, not to lean, but keep it level, keep it small, keep it deep. Yeah, femur head deep in the hip socket. Okay? Try that a few times on your own, and then rest, because it's tiring. Be in Tadasana to rest. And take slow, soft inhale, slow, soft exhale. Okay. And then remove the lower strap and remove the block. So far we haven't done any big movements, but it's a lot of, but it's very deep. You know, this work is deep, even though it's not big. All right, so now stand with your feet hip width. Okay, you might, if you need to tighten your sacral strap or adjust the position, go ahead and do so. All right, but keep it on. All right, a little bit narrow with your feet, Layla, just a little bit. You can stand with your hands on your hips because your hands might be able to help give you information about whether your hips are level with the floor or not. So here, with the feet apart, still, of course, the femur head's moving deeply in, very tall in the hip socket, buttocks lengthened down. Now, here, lean slightly to your left until your right leg becomes light, and then let the right foot come off the floor slightly, but push out with your right foot. Push out. So what I'm suggesting here is an isometric, and then go to the other side. What I mean by that is you're pulling and pushing at the same time with that lifted leg. So the lifted leg, so now it's going to be your left leg. It's pushing out and then in at the same time. Okay? And then come on back. This is primarily about the standing leg, but now the lifted leg is also playing a role by pushing out and pushing in at the same time. And then come on out, do the other side, second side one more time. Here's a way, and then come back to the center. Here's a way of making this work more sort of concrete. You get your strap, if you have a second strap. If you don't have a second strap, I don't know, I would say like get a necktie or bathrobe tie or something. You do need two at this point, because one for the hips, one for the ankles. It's going to go on the ankles and start narrow. Start narrow, like maybe just slightly wider than hip width. Okay? And I'm pushing out into the strap with my ankles. All right? So I'm pushing out and then lifting up to the inner thighs, pulling the outer thighs in. It also helps if you might want to use something for balance. You can Have your hands at the wall like this. You can have one hand at the wall. You can have a chair in front of you. Those are all options for you. Okay. So have a feeling of like you're going to burst the belt. Burst the belt. Pull up through the legs. Pull in with the outer thighs. Okay, now shifting to your left side. Pull your left outer thigh in. Left femur head in. And then let the right leg lift and push out with your right leg. Push out. Toes are facing forward, knees facing forward. Not to lean your trunk too much. And then come back to center. In other words, don't do any of this. The other thing that tends to happen is something like this, you know? And so, and sometimes you see that with elderly people. Like it's hard for them to be upright and there's they're kind of locked in the hips. So definitely we want to stay healthy in our hips as we age. Now go to the other side. Go to your right side and then shift your weight. Let the left foot come off the floor and then push out with your left ankle. Okay, be really firm and tall on the standing leg. And then come back. Do it again. Do it again. So push out with your right leg. Pull in with your left leg. Yeah. And then come back to center. Do the second side. You can really only hold it for a few seconds because it's very intense. And then come on out. Come on back to center. Now, if that was like plenty for you, then just repeat. If you want to take it up a notch or two, then what you do is you loosen the strap. You give yourself another inch or two on the strap. Okay? So this is, I'm calling this Utthita Hasta Padasana. Because it's the same actions, it's just narrower. Okay? So now you can try this with your feet a little bit wider. It's much more difficult, but you can experiment with that and then go back and forth. So what all this stuff is doing, it's establishing, it's strengthening all the small muscles that bring us to uprightness. All the small muscles that contribute to our being bipeds rather than quadrupeds. And so then go back and forth your own timing. And so if you understand what's going on, then you can go wider, So the intensity is going to be created by how wide you go, okay? So it's up to you. But make sure you don't let loose on the firmness of the standing leg and the action of the lifted leg. Whew. I can really feel it. I hope you can too. Okay. After you've done a few sets, then rest. Let's take Adho Mukha Svanasana as a rest pose, okay? Now, don't lose the work that you have accomplished. Don't lose the progress that you've accomplished in the previous poses, and keep the femur heads pulling in as you lift the hips up. Pull the spine from back to front. So it's still a firmness in the relationship of the femurs to the hips. Okay. Now, come on up and have a chair. Okay? And then we'll do it a few times without the strap, then you can try it with the strap. Same idea, same concept. So have your left hand Have your left hand on the seat of the chair. And we're going to take like a Vashisthasana here. All right, so this is side plank, Vashisthasana. So this is all about, right now, it's primarily about this lower leg, outer thigh, pulling into the hip socket really strongly. Okay, now, this leg, like a Utthita Hasta Padasana a moment ago, this leg goes up and out, but the standing leg, lower leg, has to stay firm. And then down, try it a few times. See that the buttocks are lengthening toward the heels. Okay, and then try the other side. Vashisthasana. Yeah, this class, Misia, will be a really important one to keep in our archive because this is kind of baseline work for hip stability, sacral issues. Okay, and then lift up the other leg, pull that outer thigh in. So Layla, make sure that walk your feet away enough so that your body's not in a curve. The body should be in a straight line like Tadasana. Okay, and see that the buttocks are lengthening down, and then up with the lifted leg. Whoo-wee. It's very intense. Now, one challenge I find, try it one more time, first side. One challenge I find is that everything else wants to work besides the hips and the legs. Like my abdomen starts to grip, my breath gets tight, probably even my jaw is tight. And so can you keep the abdomen soft, the breath soft, but the legs firm? The legs firm, the hip firm. Yes. Let me watch you a little bit. See that the buttocks are lengthening down. Yes. Now, of course, we have this strap, so then the next stage of this is to do it with a strap. I'll tell you, if you have resistance bands, if you've done like PT and you have resistance bands, you can also use resistance bands here instead of a strap. So I'm pushing out into the strap, and it's quite difficult, but you can really feel what muscles are involved. Come forward toward the hand a little bit with your shoulder, Layla. Bring the shoulder forward over the wrist a little bit more. Shoulder forward. Don't adjust your feet. Just take your weight toward the hand a little bit more. Yes, okay? Okay, so you can try that a few times with the strap. And remember, the bigger the loop, the harder it is. The smaller the loop, the easier it is. After you've done that a few times, then I'll show you how you can alter it. Intensify. So now we're intensifying it. So now you come to the floor. Let's see, I think I can come here. Now you come to the floor. You can start off in Adho Mukha Svanasana. Bring that hand to the center and then come into Vashisthasana here. All right? And then the same thing here. The lower you come to the floor, the more difficult it is. So you can always go back to the chair. And then, of course, when you add the strap, it's like a whole other level of intensity. Like that. Okay, so you can try that a few times. Oh my gosh, I already did these early this morning, and so this is my second round of doing these poses. But these poses are really good for me, especially as I age. What I'm noticing is since menopause, I'm losing some strength and some muscle, and so these kinds of poses are really important for me. And anybody who's like flexible or overly flexible, anybody who's prone to sacral issues, hip issues, this stuff is like really important. Okay. And then try taking the leg up. The upper leg. And if you use a strap, you can have some resistance. Good. Now it's also really good for the shoulder, right? Because this weight bearing on the arm is really good for stabilizing the shoulder. So spread across the collarbone, pull the shoulder blades in, all that stuff. Now, after you've done that a few times with the strap on the ankles, and then the way you take it up from here is to come onto your forearms. The closer you come to the floor, the more intense these poses are. So I've come to the elbows like this, and then I'll come onto one elbow. So I'm a little bit too close, so I'm going to back up a little bit. Alrighty, this is very difficult for me. And now I have to really concentrate on this bottom hip as I lift the top leg. When that top leg lifts, it's with resistance. And it's like a Ardha Chandrasana leg rather than on Supta Padangusthasana 2 leg. You know, it's not an extra rotation. It's just the knee is facing forward. Okay? So try that a few times. From your elbows. From one elbow. Don't let that bottom hip drop. There is some abdominal work here, but don't let it be all about the abdomen. The abdomen is going to be engaged, but don't let the abdomen do all the work. Have the outer thigh, the outer hip, and the gluteals doing the work. Okay. So now, if you add the strap, it's like another level of accountability, quite intense. Okay. I'll come a little bit more onto the screen if I can. So I'm pushing out into the strap, pulling that outer thigh of the lower hip in. And it's that feeling of like trying to burst the strap. I'm pushing out into the strap instead of staying contained in the strap, like you're going to break the strap. All right. So try it on both sides. Your own pace. And of course, the wider you go with the strap, the harder it is. There's another way of doing Vashisthasana. Let me show you. You know, Iyengar yoga, we just like, we just love our variations. And let's see, maybe I'll be back here. Okay, so I'll show you without the strap because it's a little much right now. So then from here, with the feet up on the chair, I'll come into a side plank here, Vashisthasana here. You see? So I'm pulling in that outer thigh of the lower leg, and I can try with the
with the upper leg variation. It's kind of the shin. Can you see on the lower leg? It's kind of the outer shin that's on the edge of the chair. I have a padded chair. That helps. So if you want to put a blanket, sticky mat, I would suggest a sticky mat on the chair. Then that might be helpful. Okay? Now this variation is definitely much more work on the shoulder. So it's really stabilizing for the shoulder, just to really make sure that the shoulder is over the wrist and the upper arm bone is rolling out, shoulder blade very firmly pulled in. Okay, so it can be very therapeutic for the shoulder if you do it correctly, but make sure that, take care to see that the shoulder is directly over the wrist and the upper arm bones rolling out. All right, so with both feet on the chair, you can start with like a downward dog and then walk your hands forward a bit. And then bring your shoulders over your wrists. Hand on the hip. Come to one side. Turn your bottom leg out. Yeah. Interesting, huh? Shoulders back, buttocks forward. Shoulders back, buttocks forward. Yes. Yes. Good. And then you could try taking one leg up. Yeah. And you got to go up with resistance. That's good. All right. And you can do that a couple of times if you want. And then change when you're ready. I know it's intense. When you do this on your own, of course, you choose your level of intensity. You choose how many times you're going to do it, you know? So figure it out for yourself, what is working for you and what's not working. Not to let the hips drop. You got to pull that bottom hip up, yes. And then the tailbone down. Not to let the buttocks drop back behind you, but the gluteal muscles have to engage and lengthen toward the heels. Okay. Lift the top leg if you want to. Okay. All right. And you can imagine how much more challenging it would be if you were using the strap on your ankles. Okay? So you can try that on your own if you want to. All right. So now for this next little set, have a blanket and a bolster. Okay. Now the blanket can come on the mat like this and be in Stambhasana. Now Stambhasana itself is like really good medicine in terms of hip and sacral stability. Really great, and especially if you have your knees together. And then, for a lot of us, it's even difficult to get the hips over the knees in Stambhasana. So I have to really concentrate on lengthening through the front thighs, getting the buttocks forward, hips over the knees, shoulders stack over the hips, all of that. Really important and challenging in and of itself. So this already is good. Now, here's another thing to observe. Do you feel like your thighs are rolling out? That's kind of natural, but take your knees a little bit apart and see if you can get the inner thighs to soften and move back. So, in other words, we don't want to make hip extension a compromise of the femurs. So, as you're extending through the front of the hips, front of the thighs, see that the thighs are still rolling in. Or not even rolling in, but at least neutral in the hip socket. They want to roll out. They want to do something like this, right? That's much easier. But have the femurs facing forward like downward dog, like Tadasana. Okay? And from there, lengthen up. Now, what I notice in my body is that when I really put that work into the front groins, front thighs, then my knee starts to complain, because the the for instance, for me on my right leg, it doesn't really want to roll in. My right leg habitually rolls out, so my right knee is complaining about that, and so I have to convince that right thigh to talk to this right thigh and convince it to come back to the center, come back to the neutral position, so that it's not abusing the knee. So you might notice, how different parts of your body are reacting. Okay, now from here, take your left leg up. Okay. Take the bolster across your right calf. And so we're going to do a kind of I'm calling it Ekapada Ustrasana. So lifting up, lengthen through the right front thigh, take the hands back. You can keep the head up. We're not going to go into a full Ustrasana. Yeah, and if the bolster's too low, you can build it up with blankets or put blocks instead. And so it's all about the right front thigh here. And then come back, be in neutral. Now just notice if you had to shift your hips to the right or the left to get your hands to the bolster. Usually the hips kind of swish to the left when you're on your right leg. So see that the right hip stays over the right knee and start to go back again. Right hip over in line with the right knee, not to let it swing, not to let the hip swing. And then take your hands back again. And then come on up. Let's switch sides. So now be on your left shin, your right leg, like a Virabhadrasana 1. This side is much easier for me, so press the buttocks forward. But it's not like because one side is easier and it's like a good side and a bad side. It's that like they've been in an unequal relationship, and so maybe that easy side needs to take on a little bit more so that the difficult side, and then you can bring your hands back so that the difficult side doesn't have to be straining all the time. So notice these kinds of dynamics in your own body. Come on up, be neutral, and then go again. So it's all about the one leg, and femur head in. That femur head of the standing leg, which is the left leg now, has to stay in. Abdomen up and back. Come on back. Try Ustrasana now with both legs. You can use the bolster if you want. And so hopefully, and see if you can get even as you start to go back and buttocks forward. See if you can go evenly. So right and left front thigh evenly lengthening. And then hands to the bolster. This time take the head back. If you want, you can slide your hands down to your feet. Hands on the bolster. Long through the front thighs. Femur heads in, inner thighs back. Inner thighs back, not to grip the inner thighs. Okay, come up when you're ready. Take a couple of breaths. And try it one more time. Inhale, exhale, buttocks forward, femur heads in, inner thighs back, groin soft. Start to go back. Place the hands. Press the palms. Lift the chest. Navel in, inner thighs back, buttocks forward. Release your head. Good. And come on up. Okay, and just sit on your heels, sit on your bolster for a couple of breaths. All right, let's take Chatushpadasana now. So, lie on your back. With your legs bent. All right, roll your shoulders under well. Inhale, make sure your toes are pointing forward. Inhale, exhale, Chatushpadasana. Lift the hips up. And then maybe you can put your fingertips on your pelvic rims. You can look turn your eyes toward your hips maybe, and then see if you can get the hips to be even. Like I can feel that my hips are not quite even. So how do I get my hips to be even? Femur heads in, buttocks lengthening toward the backs of the knees, and pressing up as high as possible. And then come on down. Let's do it with blocks, okay? Let's have 2 blocks. Because that'll give you a lot more lift to the hips. So the feet up on blocks. For people with low back pain, back bends are sometimes helpful, sometimes not. But Chatushpadasana, I think, is a really important one for so many different conditions. Inhale, exhale. Now lift up. So now with the feet up on height, you should be able to get the hips higher. Buttocks reaching toward the backs of the knees. You can place your fingertips on the pelvic rims to see if the hands are at the same height. See if you need to work more on one leg or another. Okay, and then come on down. Now, this time, push the blocks together so the 2 blocks are touching, okay? And bring your feet closer together. They don't have to touch, but bring them definitely closer together. All right, inhale, exhale. Lift up again with the feet closer to each other. And lift the hips. Okay, so this is where it starts to get tricky. Now, grip the mat with your hands and roll your shoulders under and get a good hold of the mat with your hands so that you have stability in the shoulders. Okay, so now shift your weight to your left leg. Start to lift your right foot off the floor. Come back down. Shift your weight to the center and then to your left leg. Start to lift your right foot just a little bit off the floor, just a little bit, and then come on down. Okay, rest. And then do it again. Let me watch you. Lift the buttocks up. Chatushpadasana. Grip the mat. Come nice and close to the blocks. Come nice and close in, so that the hips are touching the blocks when you start. Okay, and then try the Ekapada variation. Shift to one leg. Slightly lift one foot. Yep, but don't let the buttocks drop. Do you see how the buttocks want to drop when you do that? And then shift to the other leg. First, come up to your maximum. Come up to your maximum, and then try the one leg. Yeah. So this is very strengthening, really important. Shows you a lot about what's going on in your hips and spine and legs. Okay, and then release. Now, if that's going okay, then you can try taking your leg all the way up. So, what I mean by that, so here I am in Chatushpadasana, and then I'm going to show you on my easier side. So then I lift one leg and then extend it into Ekapada. All right? And then oh, this side is so difficult for me. I can really feel the hips dropping. That my right fingerhead doesn't want to stay in. Okay? So try that a couple of times. So now the leg goes straight. Inhale, exhale, Chatushpadasana, way up high, way up high. And then shift to the one side or another. Shift to one side, lift the other leg, and then extend it up to the ceiling. Lift the buttocks, higher, higher, higher. And then come on down. You'll know when you come down whether the buttocks drop. Okay, try the other side. Try the other side. So remember, the goal is as if you had an assistant holding the hips up. Don't let the hips drop. As if you had an assistant holding the hips up. Okay, and then come on down. And then rest. Okay. All right. So this is all homework. This is all stuff that I hope that you find useful. And especially those times when you're having instability, so sometimes when we've done like a lot of forward bending, we destabilize the hips, we destabilize the sacrum. Sometimes if you've done like a lot of hip opening, like Ekapada, Shishasana, put your foot behind your head and stuff like that. Or a lot of Padmasana. Sometimes we destabilize the sacrum when we're working a lot on like Padmasana poses. So have this in your repertoire for when you need to kind of like knit things back together. Okay. Let's take Ardha Uttanasana. Well, I'll give you a choice, okay? You can either take Ardha Halasana or Chair Savangasana to end. All right? So it's up to you. But take the last 5 minutes to do a rest and recovery pose. Either Chair Savangasana or Ardha Halasana. So I think, our society, that there are people in our society who've been acculturated to just like hold themselves really tight, to like maintain stability, maintain the status quo no matter what. And that can be to their detriment. Because then you lose range of motion, you lose the suppleness of the limbs and all the movement possibilities, movement capacities. But then there are people who are used to being so accommodating, people who are so used to like being flexible, literally, and being accommodating, being generous, and giving, and then that can be destabilizing. That can create a lack of grounding, a lack of a foundation. And so I think we really need to find both ways that we can be stable but also flexible. In Iyengar yoga we call it stability, mobility, and learning how to experience and establish both stability and mobility. We need both. And only you know what proportions are necessary for you on any given day. It's not going to be like the same every day. So anyway, these are some of the what we were doing today are poses that you can do on those days when you are really needing stability. Let's say when you've done a lot of gardening, a lot of Maybe put a block under your hips, Layla. Maybe 2 blocks so that you have plenty of support under your trunk, because your neck needs to be on the bolster if you're doing Ardha Halasana. Your neck needs to be on the bolster. So yeah, if you've been like, for instance, doing a lot of lifting, a lot of bending over, a lot of gardening, or lots of hip opening, that sort of thing. Your neck needs to be on the bolster to start, otherwise you're going to slide right off the bolster. Yeah. The head will eventually come to the floor once you take your legs up and over. It might be helpful to have a wall for your feet or furniture for your feet to push off of. Yeah, it's difficult. So a wall or a second chair or making it work at home, whatever you need to do. Lift the hips first. Go into like a Chatushpadasana first, Layla. Come into like a Chatushpadasana. Lift the hips way up, get way up onto the tops of your shoulders, way up into the tops of your shoulders. Okay, there. Now take one leg over, then the other leg over. Kind of kick off. Kick, yes. Well, so I think next time what I would do, Layla, is use the blankets under the shoulders and the bolster on the chair, because the shoulders are seeking stability. All right. You all continue for as long as you want in your final pose, and of course you can take Shavasana, and then I will sign off and end the meeting. But yeah, you all carry on, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you all for your support as we go through this COVID quarantine, and I'll keep you all posted. Okay? Have a good day. Thank you, Ricia.